Welcome to Life Map with Dr. Matt Jensen, a podcast dedicated to empowering teens and young adults. Join us on a journey of self-discovery as we tackle overcoming obstacles and challenges while igniting your true potential in rising to the best version of yourself. Here's your host, Dr. Matt Jensen.
Once again, welcome back. I'm Dr. Matt Jensen. I'm grateful and excited that you joined us once again on our podcast, Life Map with Dr. Matt Jensen, as we continue to explore solutions and opportunities for us to overcome the many hazards that are on our journey of life. And I'm grateful that each one of you have chosen to tune in. I've got an extra special treat for you today. I've got a guest. Now, I know I say that just about every time I have a guest, but I have a personal connection to my guest today, and I'm just really thrilled to share this with you. Let me just give you a quick background of how I met the amazing, the great, and he's probably embarrassed that I say this, but the amazing Geofrey Okeny. I started doing our humanitarian work. My wife and I founded the charitable organization where I take dental treatment to third world countries with volunteers and with dentists. And it's been one of the most amazing experiences of my life. But more importantly is the amazing people that I've met through our foundation. Well, right after we had formed the foundation and just before I sold my dental practices, I got an email. Or I should say, one of my staff members came to me and told me about an email sent to the office from somebody in Uganda, Africa, asking to connect with me. Well, I was a little bit, of course, skeptical at what this contact was like and what the true intent was. And so I went ahead and read it, but it sounded pretty genuine to me. And so I decided to Google and see if this person, Geofrey Okeny, was truly who he said he was in this email. Sure enough, I found his Facebook pages. I found different listings that seemed to be that indeed he was somebody in the dental field in Uganda, and it seemed like his reaching out to me seemed to be pretty genuine and authentic. And so I returned his email, and we agreed on a time when we could get together on a Zoom to learn a little bit from each other. And that began an amazing relationship that to this day is one of my most cherished relationships and connections I think that I've ever had. I've been able to serve with Geofrey now in both Uganda and Kenya, where with our dental backgrounds, we're able to go to communities and provide dental care and relief of pain and infection to the individuals and areas where they need it most. But this is only kind of the beginning of who Geofrey is. Let me read a little bit more of a formal background on Geofrey. Born in Okwici Village, Uganda, during a tumultuous period marked by conflict, Geofrey Okeny's early life was shaped by adversity, including his parents' abduction and then miraculous escape from rebel forces in Northern Uganda with the South Sudan Conflict of the 90s. After finding refuge in Kampala, Geofrey pursued his education. It led him to dental school in Gulu. Today, he owns two dental practices. He teaches and is instructor at the Gulu College of Health Sciences School of Dentistry, and he is the founder and runs Oral Health Uganda, a nonprofit organization that brings dental care to rural communities, including his own hometown. Geofrey's journey from a war-affected village to becoming a pillar of hope in oral health care is a testament to resilience, dedication, and the power of giving back to those in need. The story is that Geofrey's background, humble and challenging as they were, led him and fueled his desire to become a force for good. And so, what was it? Just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was with Geofrey in Kenya, where we did a dental outreach project in a small village in Kenya, and we celebrated his 28th birthday. I can't wait to tell you about the birthday celebration. It's so different and inspiring than the way that we do it here in the United States. But in Geofrey's 28 years, his story is just as or more inspirational than anybody that might be 88 years old in the work that they're trying to do. Geofrey, my good friend, it is great to have you on our podcast today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, my friend, Dr. Jensen Matthew. It's such a privilege and an honor to talk to your followers and get to actually share my story. I'm so happy and I can't wait to talk about my life and how the Lord has been good in changing. Now, I am Geofrey Okeny and I'm from Kitgum district located in Northern Uganda, closer to the border of South Sudan. I was born in a time of war, 1996, and during that time, it was the peak of the Lord's Resistance Army War. And during that time, it was really so difficult for people to live freely. People were being killed, people were being abducted to join the rebel groups. Youth at my ages were actually key people they looked at to be the kid soldiers or the soldiers in the rebel group. So it was a very difficult time. Now, I remember a story where my mom told me that they actually got abducted. Now, in Africa or in Uganda, people live homestays. Therefore, a whole family being abducted was quite very interesting story my mom told me. So,
Geofrey, were they abducted before you were born or right after you were born?
at that time, I was already born. I was 1 year old.
Wow.
That time. That was it.
So you were just a baby when they were abducted. Okay.
Yes.
So go on.
So I was only lucky that I was a baby, so could not feel what they were going through. But yes, it was really terrible. So they made them carry luggage. They made them carry a lot of heavy stuff and then move long distances. And then one funny thing about the rebels was that if you said you were tired, they would make you rest with a gunpoint. So they
Wow.
would just shoot you and kill you. So in order to keep up that you want to live, therefore you need not to say you are tired. So you need to keep going. So it was a very difficult moment, my parents. But however, they miraculous. They actually escaped. They got the opportunity and then they escaped. And it was during that time that they actually ran away from the northern part of Uganda and went to Kampala, the capital city, which was much safer.
So tell me about how
Now,
they escaped. Did they tell you how they were able to escape those rebel forces? This is fascinating.
the escape, they said they sent them because sometimes when they get to a new place, they don't want to show that they are the ones that have come. So they send people that they've abducted to first go and see if the areas are safe for them to come in. But now during that time, uh, they actually warn you that if you try to escape, you are killed. And that if they give you the warning that if you try to escape, you are killed. And yeah, my parents didn't lose on the chance. They tried and then they escaped.
Wow. So they were sent to check out a new area. And when they were away, they took their chances and they ran. Wow. I can imagine.
Luckily, the government forces were also around an ambush around that place. So when they went to that nearby village, they were lucky to find the government forces in that village. So that's how they decided not to get back to their side. So the government forces took them on, and that's how they survived.
Wow. Amazing. So when they escaped these forces, were they able to go back to their village in Kitgum, or is that point did they just go straight to Kampala?
No, they didn't go back to the village. So with the same clothes you have, the same whatever you have, they just looked for a way of escaping and then they went off to Kampala.
So let me share with our audience, and I'm going to have Mark, my producer, put a map of Uganda so that we can see where the capital city of Kampala is down at the south, and then how far up Gulu and Kitgum was. Kitgum was the village, Gulu was the biggest city close to your home village. And so I made that journey, by the way, to go just even by van from the capital city up to where Kitgum is. It's a 6 to 8 hour bus ride or car ride. So I just can't imagine. It just blows my mind that they literally, with the clothes on their back and their baby Geofrey in their arms, just decided to flee. And do you remember, did they tell you about what it was like, their journey on foot and how they finally reached the capital city hundreds of kilometers away?
So my mom told me that I was on her back, so she carried me on her back, and then they ran. At least you've been to my village, so they ran all the way from my village in Okwici, and then they ran all the way to almost halfway Gulu city. And during that time, it was when they found one of the army commanders that was going to the city, like that was going to Kampala, and they actually gave them a lift, and then that's how they reached Kampala.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. So they made their way to Kampala. You were about a year old or so. How long did your family live in Kampala? And what did they have to find a place to live? Did your father find work? How long were they in Kampala, and what was life like there?
From the year 1997, when my parents moved to Kampala. So they actually, my dad said when he just reached, he actually had no idea where he could go. So they went and reached a construction site where they were doing like some construction works were ongoing. And then he asked the site foreman if he could give him a job. And then the site foreman was like, okay, maybe, but there are very many people that are here. Then he was like, okay, let me try, give me a trial. And then he was given some foundation work to dig the building, the foundation of the building. So he made sure he did it to his best. So he did the work so well, and then the site foreman was impressed, and then he was given the job. And then later on, he asked the site foreman if he could be allowed to take care of the site. So there were some small iron sheet building. Like when I say iron sheets, I believe you guys know. Yeah, so a building made out of iron sheets that were in the construction site. So he was given that place, and then he was given the responsibility to take care of that site. And during that time, he stayed at that site for over 7 years. And as the main building was coming up, we used to stay in that iron sheet building. And that was the time when I got to know myself that, hey, I exist. So during that time, we used to stay in that iron sheet building. That's how I remember.
So that's your earliest memories. Your earliest childhood memory was being in Kampala when your parents were working. So, wow. So he found work down in Kampala. Tell me now, how long were they in Kampala before they went back to your home village?
Well, I stayed in Kampala from 1997 to the year 2006. It was in the year 2006, my dad lost his job because from the time when he was working at that site, he kept changing from job to job because he began learning how to do the construction work, how to do metal fabrications. So that's how he began learning. So he kept on switching from one job to another, one job to another. And then in the year 2006, uh, there was scarcity and there was no job. And then he felt like the best thing to do was get back home. And that's how he gets back to Kit district or village.
Wow. So nearly about 9 or 10 years after fleeing, they felt like it was safe to go because I guess that means the conflict had started to calm down and it was safer to go up there.
Yes. The conflict had subsided. And by the year 2006, it was the government forces had actually overthrown the rebel groups that were within the district and the surrounding villages, and therefore it was now safer. So most people had now begun going home. And some people that were living in what we call internally displaced camps were also dispersed to go back home.
Wow. Amazing story. So did they move back to the very village? Was the house that they lived in still there?
No, they when we went back home. So I remember I moved. I moved with my mom and dad, and then we came to Kitco Town, where he got some single room house, single room, one room. So we're staying there, me, him, and then my dad and some other like young sister of mine. And then he went to the village. That is the former village where we went to. And then he began. I remember there was this one small hut, like one hut that he began with constructing. So he constructed that hut. And then after like about 2 months, we left the Kidgum town and went to the real village where I was born. And we were staying
Wow.
in just one hut. And then began now like adding more smaller huts. That's how we got to expand.
I'm gonna have Mark, my producer, put up a picture. It was about a year, maybe more than a year ago, that my son Zachary and I first met Geoffrey, and we got to go to his village and we got to meet his amazing mother and father. So you can see this picture of us with his mother and father in the village. This is the very village that they returned to after the conflict and where they continued to raise Geoffrey. And also, we'll throw up a picture, whether Mark's done it or not already, of Geoffrey is a young boy, maybe 3 or 4 years old, with his family. So you can see him and his sisters are wonderful, along with that wonderful mother and father of his that I've met, and I've been able to express my love and appreciation for raising such a fine young man. So Geoffrey, let's go now from there. What was life like growing up in that small little village outside of Kitgum? Did you go to school at that point? What were your duties around the village? Tell us what life was like growing up.
Well, my initial first life was in Kampala, which is the capital city of Uganda. And life there was quite different from when I went back to my own village. So in the city, it was a mixture of very many tribes, and we could actually you meet very many people from different parts of the country, all in Kampala, and the standard of life was a bit higher or better than when we went back to the village. So when I went back to Kitgum, everything felt quite very different, and getting fit in that village life was very very difficult for me because I was a bit used to living around city center or city city area. But then when I went back to village, we used to stay in that small hut, and the condition of life was quite very difficult because you have to wake up in the morning. The first thing you do is to go to the garden, go to the garden. And that's the first thing that we always do when you wake up in the morning. Go and get your hoe, and then you go to the garden to dig. And it was quite difficult because in Kampala, we used not to do that. Kampala, everyone wakes up and then there's nothing you have to do. So when we came back to the village, getting to adapt to that life, waking up in the morning, sweeping the compound, cleaning around, and then going to dig in the garden, it was really not very easy to catch up with. But however, it was an amazing thing because we used to go as a family. We wake up in the morning and then we all go to the garden as we actually chat around, we do the work as we are chatting. So it was all good. Like, it was amazing. So personally, I was sent to boarding school That was now my high school. Um, so I would in the school times, I would be in boarding school in Kitgum town. And then in the holidays, I am with mom and papa. So in the morning, we wake up, sweep around the compound, then we go to the garden together, then we come back. And then, yeah, it was just an amazing experience.
I think it's important for our guests to understand that when Geoffrey says garden, it's not some cute little 20-foot by 20-foot plot with a few vegetables. It is nearly the size of a field. And they are dependent on that. Geoffrey, correct me if I'm wrong, they're dependent on the vegetables and fruits that they grow for their sustenance. And sometimes they can sell the extras to other for a little bit of money, but they don't have, listen, Americans, they don't have a Walmart 10 minutes down the road. To this day, they don't. And growing a beautiful grove of trees and vegetables and root vegetable is the way that they sustain themselves. And so, Geoffrey, I think it's neat that you brought up that that's one of your biggest memories of growing up was how important that garden was to your very lifestyle and sustenance, wasn't it?
Yes. Now, you see, here like during that time, there was nothing like waking up to go for a job, a formal job. No, wasn't there. You need to wake up, go to the garden, dig, plant some food, and then it is from the extras from the food that we sell to pay school fees, to pay for small bills, buy things. So go to the garden, plant food, and then eat the extras, and then eat some, and then the extras are the ones that are sold to get some money to pay school fees and get up for some few bills. Now, my mom likes poultry. So
Chicken,
each
likes
time you would
chicken,
come to
right?
our
When you
house,
say
there were a
poultry, you
lot
mean
of
chicken.
hens and chicken cocks like moving around the compound. So I always remember that each time I would come back from school, she would kill for me a whole chicken.
Wow. So
So
Geoffrey's home. Let's kill the fatted chicken and have a feast, right?
yes, that was
Oh,
how it
that's
is.
amazing.
And
That's
even up to date, if I go home to visit my mom and dad, first thing that happens is, hey, let's chase the chicken.
Hey, Geoffrey, I
So
don't
they
know if
have
I should
one
be
piece.
offended. They didn't kill a chicken when I visited them. Oh,
They
I'm
did,
teasing.
they did.
I would be offended if they would have done that for me. But I'll tell you, when we visited Geoffrey's village, the love and the adoration that they have for their son, he's their only son, by the way, is so evident. And Geoffrey, tell us about boarding school, because in the US, when we hear the word boarding school, we think that that's a place where we send troubled children, right? Boarding school is a place where if you're a troubled teenager, if you're causing problems, your parents are going to ship you to boarding school. Now, that's mostly an old wives' tale. I don't know how true that is in today's educational picture in the US, but boarding school was probably, I believe in Uganda, one of the safer and more valuable ways to get an education. Tell us about boarding school and what it was like there.
So for me, particular, I went to boarding school because of the distance from my village to where my school was. So the road network itself was very difficult. It was difficult for me to move from my village to come to school every day. And then the distance was actually very long. There was no school around my village. So we have to move a very long distance to find a school. So my parents thought it wise that to reduce on all that burden of moving a long distance to look for a school every day, it is better that I go to a boarding school where I do the learning and then come back holidays. So that was the reason why, for me, I was sent to boarding school.
Wow.
I was
So
not troubled for
how many years were you at the boarding school?
4 years, from the year 2010 to 2013.
How did you like school? Were you a good student?
Yeah, I was a good student. I took on roles in school, student leadership. I was actually a head prefect in the student leadership. So during that time in school, it was a wonderful experience. I was not troublesome.
So tell me,
No, it,
did you have a drive in school? Tell me, what effect did your parents' background, your parents' support of you, knowing what they had gone through, what effect did your growing up and your family have on your desire to succeed in school?
well, I come from a family which I should say we didn't have things, we didn't have assets, we didn't have, you know, it was a struggling family. And when I was sent to school, I remember my parents had a good harvest, and then they sold off the harvest, and then they were only left with something little for themselves to eat. So they sold off most of the harvest so that I could go to school. So when I went to school, the boarding school, I knew that I had to make it, because it was really difficult for my parents to get the tuition, the school fees. So I had to focus, and I was glad that the school where I went to offered some scholarships and bursaries to people that performed well. And I remember that was the last time they ever paid my tuition, because I was always trying to be the best in class, and that's how I could sustain uh, um, being in school without having to pay school fees. So that's how I managed.
Wow. Wow. So not only did you get to go to a good school, a boarding school, but you performed well enough with your performance, your grades, that you were able to get scholarship. That was probably a great blessing to your parents and to your family that you were able to get those fees taken care of.
Yes, it was. Up to now, I still thank God that He actually helped me succeed in class, because I used to get almost all the marks all the time. So it was just God's blessing.
Wow. This is great. This is actually a good time to stop. To my viewers, this interview with Geofrey will be a two-part series, and this has been fascinating. In fact, I've learned a lot today. I spend time with Geofrey in the dental world, and in our next segment, we're going to get into what inspired Geofrey's work that he is involved in now. You don't want to miss the next episode, because this man has a heart of unbelievable compassion, and what he has chosen to do with the blessings, with the fortune that he has found, and to bless the lives of others is truly inspiring. But I hope you've seen, especially to my young listeners, when we think about the challenges that we have in life, when we think about the difficult times, and they are difficult. And I'm a firm believer that each generation, we have our own challenges that are meant for us in the time that we're living. But we can draw on such inspiration when we think of the difficult times of others in different circumstances. Geofrey grew up or started his life in this little village before the war-torn ravages, or I should say the ravages of being in a war-torn area, forced his family to flee under an amazing circumstance, abduction and occupation, and the examples of his parents and their resolution to escape oppression and to find a better life for their family is just inspiring. And I just happen to believe that spirit of resilience, that spirit of determination is what fueled Geofrey to do what he's doing and to become who he is today. And I'm excited to share those segments coming up very quickly in our next segment. But Geofrey, thanks for joining us today on this first segment. You are an inspiration to me, my friend, and you make me want to be a better person. So thanks for this first segment.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jensen. I'm glad that I ever managed to meet you. And then now I'm meeting your followers as well. Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes. And we're going to put in the show notes Geofrey's social channels so that you can connect with him and follow his story and his organization more closely. I want to hear from each of you followers. If you have a question for Geofrey, I want you to put your questions in the comments or send me a message through one of my direct messaging platforms. But I want to hear specific questions that you have for Geofrey, and I will revisit these, and we will have him on again in a future episode where we can get into those. But I will give you answers to those questions. As also, here's another specific question. What part of Geofrey's story and growing up inspires you the most? Please put your questions in the comments or send them to me directly, but I want to hear from you. Geofrey wants to hear from you. So make sure you hit me up on my social media channels, subscribe to all of my channels. Make sure you tune into our next episode. We want to get messages like Geofrey's out. We want to be a beacon of hope and a beacon and a source of good and light for others. Thanks for joining me today on Life Map with Dr. Matt Jensen, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care, everybody, and have a great day and a great week.